Follow car filming is one of the best ways to film downhill skateboarding. You're not going to get as much quality footage with such low effort as it is to drive your car behind somebody with the camera mounted to the hood. And while it is very easy to get good footage this way, it's also definitely the most dangerous way to get footage. Obviously, following your friend at a very close distance in a car when they're on a skateboard, very likely to fall, is a risky thing to do. The most important thing when it comes to follow car driving is the driver. Obviously, you want to be a capable driver. However, what the most important thing is that you have the maturity to be able to say that you are not comfortable in a given situation and you need to back off. I've seen people who find it so important to get every little bit of every little shot, and because of that, they are pushing themselves outside of the comfort zone, which puts everybody at risk. It's important that when you are driving, you know the rider pretty well and how they skate. Reading their body language is critical in that you can see when they're going to grip, know when they are going to drift, know when they are going to high side, all these things so you can anticipate any accidents happening. While you do want to be able to anticipate things, it's very difficult to watch a skater improvise down the hill and to know what to do at all moments. So it's best to plan out with your rider where they are going to slide. Are they going to 180 here? What kind of drift are they doing here? How much do they want to slide? Are they just going to go full speed? Are they free riding? Where are they sliding? Etc. As for your camera, you want a very, very, very wide lens. 10 millimeters or under is generally pretty good. You won't be very satisfied with any lens that is slightly bigger than that. Even up to 15 millimeters, you're going to feel like the footage is way too slow and does not compare to other people's. Take your camera and set it to a manual mode and change the f-stop to as basically high as it can go without you not being able to see anything. Once you go up to a certain level, it's going to be almost black, the footage, but that way you're capturing most of the scenery in focus. The camera that I use is a Canon 7D, and I use a Canon 10 to 18 millimeter lens. It's not the crispiest 4K style footage, but I can shoot in 1080 and the footage looks pretty fast. Some cars are going to be more capable for follow car filming than others. Depends on what your standard for safety is when it comes to follow car filming. Try to avoid larger SUVs and generally high up heavier cars. Also cars with very, very loose suspension. Those cars are going to rock back and forth when you are driving and changing weight of the car, turning quickly as you're going through corners. Having a car that is generally lightweight is always a good idea because it's going to be less wear on your brakes as you guys are driving. It is also not a bad idea to have a car that is generally lower so that you don't have too much body roll. You can't go too low though, because if you go too low you can bottom out when you're dropping into certain hairpin corners, and you really don't obviously want to be bottoming out while you're driving. Probably one of the more important aspects to the car is going to be the tires and brakes. The standard should just be at the very least that you're using tires that are not bald, that have good tread. They're generally a newer tire. On top of that, you also want to make sure that you have good brakes, and not just any brakes, but probably you want to have disc brakes. If you have drum brakes in the back, it's probably not going to stop as well as it really should. It's not going to be super safe when you really need to stop suddenly. A manual transmission car is going to be best when follow car driving. That way you can use engine braking when you are driving. You can also use an automatic that does have the ability to shift gears on its own through paddles or through an automated shifter. Again, that way you can save some of your braking ability by using your engine braking. This all being said, this is definitely a way more capable car than I've driven in the past. I've driven cars that don't have power steering, I've driven cars that don't have the tightest suspension, and I've also driven heavier SUVs. So it all depends on how comfortable you are behind the wheel of your car. You know the limits of the vehicle. When you're choosing where to mount your camera, you basically have three options. The first most obvious option is going to be the dead center front of the hood. This is going to be the best when you just have a huge variety of corners, especially for really long roads. One where you're going to want to get a more scenic view of the road, sitting slightly higher. It will be a slightly slower look than a lot of the other angles that we can see here, but it does show the most of the road and the rider. The second option right here is going to be mounted to one of the headlights. This is going to sit slightly lower than the hood. You're going to get a slightly faster look. It will be a little bit off center, but if your lens is wide enough as it should be for follow filming, you will definitely still get the rider. This is probably the most common angle that I use when I am filming. The last option you have for follow filming is going to be mounted just to the front bumper. This is the lowest angle. It's going to look super fast because it's so low. One drawback to this, two drawbacks really. The first drawback to this is that a lot of people know that when the camera is mounted this low, it doesn't actually show the true speed, it shows somewhat faster speed. And the second drawback is that you're not necessarily going to get a huge amount of scenery in your shot. A lot of it's going to be road. When you're driving, there's a certain way that you can set up your vehicle so that you are most comfortable and have the best visibility. First thing that you're going to want to do is to raise your seat up as high as it can go. Obviously you want to stop before your head is actually hitting the ceiling, but the reason why you want to see this is so that you can see more of the rider. Since the rider is most likely going to be just in front of your bumper, you want to be able to see them as much as you can. Number two, you want to sit at the distance to your wheel where your arm can cross over to the opposite side of the wheel and remain straight or slightly bent. The reason for sitting at this distance is you want your seat to support your body as you are turning, so that way you have the seat to push against when you are turning the wheel. With this, you should be able to do a full 180-degree turn while still maintaining your hand grip on the wheel while driving. The grip you should have on your wheel is at 9 and 3, maintaining as much turnability as you can while still maintaining grip the entire time. When you're driving, you want to always have your eyes on the rider as much as possible. The only times that you should not have your eyes on the actual rider is when you're coming into a very tight turn and you occasionally want to look down at the inside line to make sure that you stay on the road the whole time. The only other time you should look away from the rider is if you see an oncoming car. Now, with both of these, whether looking at a corner or an oncoming car, you should only be glancing very quickly to make sure that you're in the right position, but then immediately having your eyes back on the rider as quickly as possible. One last thing that I've noticed about follow car driving is you don't want your camera right up against the rider. The camera should be slightly off of where the rider is, off to the left or off to the right, either way. This way, you get to see more of the rider than just right up close to their butt. You don't actually really want to see that angle. It's better if you can see a slight side profile of the rider versus just the body language from the exact behind position. When you first start follow car filming, probably the first time you ever do it, don't expect to get a bunch of really good footage. Try your best just to get yourself used to setting up your camera the correct way, getting decent footage, and don't try and get as close as possible right off the bat. It's going to take practice, and you don't want to be putting your friends in an unnecessary risk the first time that you do it. You'll quickly learn when reviewing footage how close you truly do have to be in order to get good footage. Be careful when you're follow car filming, it's really dangerous. Make sure that you trust the driver that is filming you. Make sure that you understand the rider that you're filming if you're driving, and create good videos.